Welcome back to Griffonomics, where we conduct financial investigations to define the risk before we look at the reward. Today, we're diving into NeuroOne Medical Technologies Corporation, ticker symbol NMTC. This is a company that has, well, it's been sitting squarely in that speculative early-stage medtech bucket for years, but our sources are pointing toward a potential massive inflection point that, frankly, demands a deep, critical review.
It really does. This deep dive presents a classic high-risk, high-reward bet, and I think we need to frame the central conflict immediately for you. NMTC is betting its patented thin-film electrode platform and the OneRF Ablation System's validated procedural success will drive hypergrowth, justifying the extreme speculative risk inherent in the $77.1 million accumulated deficit, the historical auditor concern about its ability to continue as a going concern, which carries implicit NASDAQ listing risk, and the critical revenue dependence on its exclusive distributor, Zimmer Biomet.
That is the perfect thesis statement. It encapsulates the entire story right there. You have this groundbreaking, almost sci-fi technology squaring off against some very serious, very real structural, financial, and commercial execution risks. And before we even start celebrating the innovation, we have to acknowledge that number. $77 million. That's the accumulated deficit.
Yeah.
That is not a small hill to climb, especially for a company with a market cap that, still reflects its early stage.
Exactly. I mean, historical financial scrutiny, including those auditor concerns about its viability, that remains the profound drag on investor sentiment. It requires constant vigilance.
And when an auditor uses language like substantial doubt about a company's ability to operate as a going concern,
that's a red flag.
A huge one.
It's a red flag that echoes for years, regardless of how much capital they subsequently raise. It implies vulnerability. It implies dependence on external financing, and critically, it brings up NASDAQ listing risk if they fail certain financial tests down the line.
So what we're really analyzing here is a company that is, in a way, fighting its own history while trying to execute this hyper-growth future.
Perfectly put.
Which brings us to the present. Our sources show a company that is decisively shifting from being, let's say, a pure R&D shop to actually hitting real commercial traction. They're achieving what the market calls an inflection point. Let's unpack this financial transformation.
It's a profound operational change and, frankly, a necessary one. After years of investment in research and development, if they didn't start converting that R&D into scalable, profitable revenue, that auditor risk we mentioned, it would become acute.
It would become reality.
It would. So when we examine the financial results for the 9 months ended June 30, 2025, so that's 9MFY25, we see just undeniable evidence that this commercial engine is finally hitting its stride.
And that commercial traction, that's the validation everyone was waiting for, right?
Right.
It's the proof that neurosurgeons are actually adopting the product, that the distribution channel is working.
It is.
And the core metric here is striking. I mean, decisive commercial success with product revenue increasing by 100%.
100%.
To $6.4 million for those 9 months, compared to $3.2 million in the prior period. Doubling revenue year over year in a complex, regulated market like medtech that is not trivial. It requires significant procedural adoption.
It signals a fundamental shift in the demand dynamics. And when you look deeper, you have to ask yourself, okay, is this organic adoption driven by real clinical outcomes? Or is this just Zimmer Biomet stocking inventory to meet, some minimum purchase requirement?
A very important question.
And while some inventory build is natural in a new partnership, the sheer magnitude of this growth and management's subsequent guidance, it suggests genuine uptake by hospitals.
And management certainly didn't temper expectations, did they? They confidently guided the market upward. They're expecting full-year fiscal 2025 product revenue to land somewhere between $8.0 million and $10.0 million.
That range is the true punchline. When you project that against their FY24 performance, you're looking at a massive projected increase of 132% to 190% over the previous fiscal year.
Wow.
This isn't just incremental growth. This is hypergrowth territory.
Yeah.
And it's driven primarily by their epilepsy solution. It strongly validates that the market demand for their core technology is robust and it's scaling rapidly.
So it suggests the Zimmer Biomet partnership is, at least in this initial phase, really delivering on its distribution promise.
It seems to be, yes.
But, in medtech, top-line growth can sometimes mask structural issues, especially if the product is super expensive to make. So this leads us to the critical profitability driver, margin expansion. The revenue growth is impressive, but this margin improvement, it's arguably the most bullish indicator here.
I agree completely. This is the difference between having a high growth vanity metric
Right.
and actually building a fundamentally healthy, sustainable business. The product gross margin improved significantly to 56.8% for the 9 months, ended June 30th, 2025. You are seeing a dramatic leap from just 29.5% in the prior 9-month period.
That is phenomenal, a near doubling of gross margin in less than a year. If you compare that 56.8% margin to, say, a mature industrial company, it's high.
But the real comparison is other medtech leaders.
Exactly. When you compare it to established, cutting-edge players like Medtronic or Abbott, who often operate in the 60 to 75% range for their innovative device segments, 56.8% shows they're moving into a truly sustainable premium pricing category.
And this steep margin curve confirms that their product mix is radically changing for the better. The improvement is being driven by successful sales of their higher margin flagship product, the OneRF Ablation System.
So the market is willing to pay a premium for that technological advantage.
They are. It tells us they are successfully monetizing their intellectual property.
And again, management's confidence is reflected in the guidance here, too. They actually increased their full-year gross margin expectations.
They did, to between 50% and 53%, which is up from their previous guidance of 47% to 51%.
That's a bullish signal. It tells you they believe this trend selling the high-margin therapeutic device is sustainable and not just some short-term blip.
Right. And then beyond pure product sales, we also need to account for the strategic capital infusion they got. The company's cash position was immediately bolstered by the $3.80 million upfront license fee they received from Zimmer Biomet.
Yes, and that is a critical financial distinction for you, the listener. That $3 million fee is strategic capital. It's for licensing expanded distribution rights for the OneRF Ablation System. And, importantly, it is not counted in that $6.4 million in product revenue we were just talking about.
That's right. It's separate, it's non-recurring, and it's purely a function of the partnership's value. It proves ZBH is committed and willing to put significant capital up front to secure those long-term rights.
So let's look at the impact on their bottom line. Operational efficiency.
Well, the net loss for the first 9 months of FY25 improved substantially to just under $2 million, so $1.99 million.
We'd have to compare that to what it was.
Exactly. Compare that to a significantly larger loss of $9.0 million in the prior year period.
That is a remarkable reduction in the cash burn rate, to go from losing $9 million in 9 months to losing barely $2 million in the same period. That shows dramatic cost control.
It does. And operational leverage from the increasing sales volume. And this wasn't accidental. The sources suggest these savings were achieved through disciplined cost control and, crucially, some really strategic in-house hiring.
Right. They brought on a chief medical advisor, Dr. Parag Patil, and a new general counsel, Emily Johns.
Yes. And moving those critical high-level functions in-house instead of relying on, expensive external consultants.
It's a classic sign of a maturing organization, isn't it?
It is. They're seeking long-term operational leverage and stability, which further validates the idea that they believe they are past that early, scrappy startup phase.
So for anyone tracking the immediate financial stability, the improved burn rate, combined with their recent capital raise, it means the liquidity profile looks far healthier than their history might suggest.
Far healthier. The company reported $8.0 million cash and cash equivalents as of June 30th, 2025.
And in this sector, high growth, high risk, the importance of that debt-free balance sheet just cannot be overstated.
No. And they made a conscious decision to de-risk. They terminated a $3 million debt facility back in November of 2024.
Smart move.
Avoiding unnecessary debt obligations during a capital-intensive growth phase like this, it just provides immense structural stability.
So synthesizing the whole financial picture then, what's the one way?
Management believes this cash position provides a funding runway for at least 12 months, so extending through fiscal year 2026.
But there's a catch.
Of course.
Yeah.
This runway is contingent on their continued expected revenue growth and flawless execution. But for the next year, the company has bought the single most important commodity for any speculative tech company.
Time.
Time. Time to focus on the pipeline, time to secure more market share, and time to continue chipping away at that accumulated deficit.
That's a powerful transition point. They've secured the financial runway for now, but that runway is pointless if the underlying technology isn't truly disruptive. We need to pivot now from the balance sheet to the engine that fuels all this growth, the patented thin-film electrode platform. The financials confirm adoption. Now we need to confirm the technological moat.
Let's face it, if this company were selling some commodity product, those 56.8% gross margins and 100% growth would be impossible to sustain. The key word here truly is disruption. Their thin film platform moves neurosurgery from historically highly invasive to truly minimally invasive.
How exactly? I mean, what are the physical differences we are talking about?
Well, the physical characteristics are the core competitive advantage. These electrodes are up to 90% thinner than competitors' products.
90%.
Yeah. Think about the difference between a thick, rigid wire and a microfabricated flexible film. This isn't just a minor improvement. It fundamentally changes the mechanical interaction with the delicate tissue of the brain.
So 90% thinner sounds like a technical detail, but what does it actually mean for the surgeon and maybe more importantly for the patient?
It completely changes the surgical risk profile and the recovery trajectory. The traditional thicker electrodes sometimes necessitate these highly invasive procedures, maybe even an open craniotomy.
A full skull opening.
A full skull opening procedure, just to implant certain types of devices safely. NMTC's thinness supports truly minimally invasive surgery. It enables procedures through what they call dime-sized openings.
A dime-sized opening versus full craniotomy. The impact on patient recovery must be immense.
It is transformative. A full craniotomy involves longer operating times, higher risks of infection and hemorrhage, significantly longer hospital stays, we're talking weeks, and a prolonged, very difficult recovery period.
Not to mention the scarring and psychological trauma.
Absolutely. Minimally invasive surgery through a tiny burr hole just dramatically reduces all of those complications. It means reduced pain, shorter hospital stays, quicker discharge, and a much faster return to a normal life. This advantage is what drives hospital system adoption because it directly reduces the overall cost of care while improving outcomes.
So NMTC's thin film platform is the physical key to unlocking that minimally invasive standard.
It is.
But the technology didn't just stop at being thin. They solved a critical clinical bottleneck in the treatment of drug-resistant epilepsy, which is what we are calling the unification breakthrough. This is the unique element that justified that high margin and the big Zimmer Biomet license fee.
This is their unique competitive and first-mover advantage, and it's why neurosurgeons are adopting it. Historically, treating drug-resistant epilepsy often required a complex two-stage process.
Right.
Stage 1. The patient undergoes a highly invasive procedure to implant diagnostic CED electrodes. These electrodes record brain activity, sometimes for up to 2 weeks, to precisely locate where the seizure is starting, the seizure focus.
And that 2-week observation period, often in an epilepsy monitoring unit, is so psychologically taxing for the patient and incredibly expensive for the system.
Absolutely. But once that focus is identified, if the neurosurgeon decided on an ablation, which is basically destroying the seizure focus or maybe stimulation, they might require a second, separate procedure to introduce a different therapeutic tool or electrode.
Why a second procedure?
Because the diagnostic electrodes were often not designed for high-power therapeutic use. They were just for listening, not for acting. This means the patient is back in the operating room under anesthesia again, dealing with all the risks and recovery of a second intervention.
And the OneRF electrode eliminates that second procedure entirely because it acts as a 2-in-1 device.
Precisely. The OneRF system is the first and only FDA-cleared product to unify diagnosis and therapy.
So it can record, it can ablate, and it can stimulate.
All using the same CG electrode. The thin film design allows them to build in these multimodal capabilities. This unification eliminates the need for multiple surgeries or procedures, providing a drastically streamlined treatment pathway.
It saves time for the surgical team, reduces costs for the hospital.
And most importantly, it massively reduces the cumulative risk and trauma for the patient.
You mentioned the human impact earlier, and I think we need to spend a little more time on that because the clinical justification for adopting a device like this is rooted in these life-changing outcomes. The anecdote of Clara Fuller really brings this technology to life for our listener.
Her story is the perfect synthesis of why this technology matters. Clara Fuller, an 18-year-old from Georgia, had been suffering immensely. She endured over 10 seizures every single night since she was 13 years old.
Every night. I can't even imagine that life. Constant fear, interrupted sleep, no ability to drive, limited educational prospects, and the constant threat of injury.
And traditional medications had failed her. In many cases, doctors eventually tell these patients that, they've exhausted their options and they just have to manage a severely diminished quality of life.
That was the path she was on.
It was. But Clara became the first pediatric patient to receive the NeuroOne device a year ago at the Mayo Clinic in Florida. And the outcome, as noted in the sources, is nothing short of miraculous for her.
She has been completely seizure-free since her surgery.
Completely. She is now in college, studying nursing, actively reclaiming the life that the seizures had stolen from her for half a decade. That is the kind of clinical validation that justifies all the investment in this kind of innovation. It tells the surgical community that the risk of the procedure is now vastly outweighed by the certainty of the outcome.
And this isn't just a single lucky case study of success, right?
No, and that's a key point. We have validation that the device has now been used on approximately 24 patients nationwide. This small but growing patient cohort proves the clinical utility is replicable across various centers and surgeons, providing that real-world data necessary for broader adoption.
So their competitive moat is built not just on being thinner, but on offering a unified procedural solution that is radically safer and more efficient than the traditional two-step standard of care. This specialization is what allows them to challenge the entrenched giants.
Precisely. I mean, NMTC is a smaller, more specialized company, but their agility and their focused innovation are key weapons against the market leaders. In the neuromodulation space, you have these established multi-billion-dollar players like Medtronic, Boston Scientific, and Abbott. They often focus on maximizing utilization of their existing broader platforms.
So NMTC is challenging them not by trying to outmuscle them on breadth,
but on the depth and minimal invasiveness of a specialized, unified procedure for epilepsy.
That focus is critical. But if the investment thesis relies solely on epilepsy, they are limited by the size of that market. This leads us to the crucial element of their long-term potential: their strategy to leverage that thin film platform into new, massive adjacent markets.
Yes.
This is where the narrative moves from successful growth to multi-platform disruption.
This multi-platform approach is absolutely essential for justifying the extreme speculative valuation. They are intelligently leveraging their core thin film electrode expertise into huge established markets, starting with a very logical expansion into pain management.
Let's discuss the near-term catalyst first.
Okay.
Expansion into trigeminal neuralgia. This is a horrific condition.
Trigeminal neuralgia is often described as one of the most painful conditions known to medicine. It's sometimes tragically nicknamed the suicide disease due to the intense, debilitating facial pain. And the company received FDA clearance for the OneRF Trigeminal Nerve Ablation System much earlier than expected.
Which is a huge win for their regulatory team.
A huge win. And the target market here is approximately 150,000 U.S. patients. It's a niche market, but for those patients, the need for relief is absolute.
And the beauty of this expansion is this strategic efficiency, right?
Exactly. They plan a limited launch in November 2025, and their target customers are the same neurosurgeons who are already performing brain ablations using the OneRF system for epilepsy.
So minimal new training, virtually no new capital equipment needed, and highly efficient customer acquisition costs for this initial rollout.
It's an easy, low-cost way to generate incremental, high-margin revenue from their existing customer base.
That makes perfect sense. Now let's talk about the big prize. The largest potential market disruption in their sights, which is chronic pain via spinal cord stimulation, or SCS. This is globally a more than $3 billion annual market.
This is where they directly take on the incumbents in the largest neuromodulation segment. This is the true game changer in the pipeline, and its success is absolutely central to the long-term thesis.
So what's the current state of SCS technology?
Current SCS tech often involves implanting these thick, paddle-shaped electrodes near the spinal cord, which requires a major surgical incision, a laminotomy, just to secure them. These devices are rigid and require significant surgical effort.
So what does NMTC offer that challenges that $3 billion status quo?
They're applying their thin film expertise to this space. The NMTC system uses a percutaneous paddle electrode that is up to 20 times thinner than current competitive devices.
20 times thinner? That's not an incremental improvement.
No. Think about that. 20 times thinner. That scale of reduction must allow for a radically different implant method.
It does. This massive reduction in size allows for superior stimulation coverage through a needle, meaning a percutaneous, minimally invasive approach, without requiring the major surgical incision that current thicker devices necessitate.
So it transforms the procedure.
Completely. It transforms it from a significant operation into a faster, less traumatic, potentially outpatient-style procedure.
That is the ultimate goal in medtech, isn't it? Moving procedures from inpatient surgical centers to outpatient or ambulatory surgical centers. If you can deliver a device that is 20x thinner, offering better coverage, and you can implant it through a needle rather than major surgery, You have the potential to fundamentally redefine the adoption curve for SCS globally.
And the clinical benefit reduced risk, faster recovery translates directly into a competitive moat against Medtronic, Abbott, and Boston Scientific.
It does. And their timeline is aggressive but necessary. They anticipate first-in-man implants in early 2026, pending positive results from their chronic animal study. If they execute on this, they open up that $3 billion-plus market with a fundamentally differentiated device.
That is a lot of if they execute. But there's one final and perhaps the most ambitious platform application, the drug delivery system, which management suggests could be the next frontier and potentially their largest opportunity yet.
This moves the company beyond pure electrophysiology and into the high-stakes world of biopharma. The system is designed to use the CG electrodes not just for recording electrical signals, but for the precise, targeted delivery of therapeutic agents directly into specific brain regions.
Why is that capability so critical right now?
Because central nervous system, or CNS drug delivery, is one of the hardest challenges in medicine. You have the blood-brain barrier, which is designed to keep things out, making systemic drug administration often ineffective or requiring toxic doses. For complex, localized treatments like gene therapy or stem cell therapy aimed at Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, or certain cancers, ultra-precise, localized delivery is mandatory.
And the thin film platform allows them to create a microfabricated conduit for precise infusion directly to the disease site.
Yes, so the diagnostic electrodes become therapeutic delivery vehicles. That capability of combining diagnostic recording with ultra-precise therapeutic delivery in a single, minimally invasive device is why the pharmaceutical industry is taking notice.
That's the external validation point.
It is. We know the company received its first order from a large pharmaceutical firm for evaluation purposes, initially focused on epilepsy treatment. This signals that large biopharma players view the thin film platform as a legitimate solution to their CNS delivery problem.
And management openly believes that this drug delivery opportunity could potentially dwarf their current markets. It moves them from competing in the device market to enabling the next generation of precision medicine.
And this ambition is backed by some serious technical pedigree. It's worth noting that the Vice President of Electrode Development, Dr. Camilo Diaz-Botia, formerly led microfabrication process engineering at Neuralink.
That pedigree speaks volumes about the expertise guiding the design of these next-generation microfabricated neural probes. It emphasizes precision engineering at the smallest possible scale.
It's a critical detail, connecting their current efforts to the very bleeding edge of neural interface technology. This suggests the technology is not just incremental, but truly foundational.
Okay. We've defined the incredible technology and the multi-billion-dollar roadmap. Now we must return to the structural risks that threaten to derail it all. Specifically, the relationship that gives them commercial viability but also creates extreme concentration risk. We need to dissect the Zimmer Biomet moat and the structural drag it imposes.
The partnership with Zimmer Biomet is the ultimate double-edged sword. It is undeniably necessary for their hyper-growth phase. ZBH has exclusive global distribution rights for NMTC's core electrodes and the OneRF Ablation System.
This instantly solves the small company problem of scaling a sales force, doesn't it? ZBH provides an instant credible sales force, leveraging their existing relationships with neurosurgeons and, critically, their complementary ROAS-1 robotic system.
The ROAS-1 robot is a key piece of surgical infrastructure. It's already installed in approximately 200 Level 4 epilepsy centers across the U.S.
And the Level 4 center is the highest designation, specializing in the most complex epilepsy procedures.
Exactly. So NMTC's products slot seamlessly into the existing robotic workflow of these top-tier centers. This synergy means ZBH can essentially hand the NeuroOne product to an already trained, high-volume customer.
And ZBH has invested significant capital, confirming their strategic commitment. We noted the $3 million license fee, but they have paid a total of $5.5 million under the initial contract since 2020.
They have real skin in the game. This indicates a genuine, validated strategic alliance, not just some passive agreement.
However, this strength creates the profound weakness. We have to address the severe structural drag, or the concentration risk. The number is just staggering and must be absorbed by anyone assessing the stock.
It's a staggering 96% of product revenue for the 9 months ended June 30, 2025, derived from this single customer.
96%. In a publicly traded company, that is the definition of extreme commercial concentration risk. What are the practical implications if the relationship sours or if Zimmer Biomet simply fails to execute?
The implications are dire, as management themselves acknowledge in their filings. The success of NeuroOne is inextricably linked to ZBH's execution. If ZBH decides to change its strategic priorities, say, to focus more heavily on orthopedics and less on neuromodulation,
Or if their sales force underperforms.
or if the relationship is disrupted for any reason, a merger, a contractual dispute, an early termination clause being triggered, it would have a material adverse effect on NeuroOne's business. That impressive revenue ramp would halt instantly.
It's a binary risk. NeuroOne has basically outsourced its entire commercial execution risk to ZBH, and they have no immediate fallback channel for 96% of their revenue. The price of that instant sales force is almost total dependence.
It demands constant monitoring. For NMTC to truly mature, they will eventually need to demonstrate a strategy, however gradual, to diversify this revenue base.
Perhaps through expanding direct sales in certain niche markets not covered by ZBH, or seeking additional distribution partners in foreign markets.
Exactly. But for now, ZBH holds all the commercial keys.
Before we move to the final synthesis, we should quickly mention the collaboration with the Mayo Clinic. While ZBH handles the commercial side, the Mayo Clinic acts as a key development partner and shareholder.
And they were involved in the initial validation, the pivotal pediatric case of Clara Fuller, and ongoing research into concepts like drug delivery. The Mayo Clinic relationship provides that crucial independent clinical credibility and research support, which supplements the raw commercial reach provided by Zimmer Biomet. It helps de-risk the R&D and clinical validation aspects of the platform.
Okay, we have defined the entire scope. The massive upside potential of a unified, thin film platform disrupting 3 multi-billion-dollar markets, epilepsy, SCS, and drug delivery, all supported by 100% revenue growth and high margins.
But we have also defined the structural downside, the $77 million deficit, the historical auditor concerns, and that 96% concentration risk. It's time to weigh this narrative.
Let's do it.
Okay, let's start with a bull case summary, which is undeniably built on demonstrated measurable momentum. You have 100% revenue growth for the first 9 months of FY25, coupled with rapid and substantial margin expansion, reaching 56.8%.
They possess FDA-cleared disruption with the OneRF unification system, solving a critical procedural bottleneck in epilepsy treatment.
Exactly. And crucially, they have a strategic low-cost pipeline extension into trigeminal neuralgia and a high-impact move into the $3 billion plus SCS market. The current funding runway of 12-plus months and the debt-free status. That buys them essential time for flawless execution on these initiatives.
Now for the bear case, the risk tally. These are the factors that justify classifying NMTC as extreme speculative risk, which aligns with our show's premise to define the rich first.
First and foremost, the historical debt load and accumulated deficit. The massive $77.0 million accumulated deficit as of June 30, 2025 is a substantial structural hurdle. Even with the improved quarterly loss of just under $2 million, it would take decades of sustained, flawless, and profitable performance just to erase that historical debt and begin generating true, retained earnings. That overhang severely limits their financial flexibility.
And linked directly to that is the financial scrutiny. We cannot ignore that the auditors previously expressed substantial doubt about the company's ability to continue as a going concern. While the current $8 million cash position mitigates the immediate risk, that history makes institutional investors very cautious.
It means any future stumble, especially a failure to meet revenue guidance, could quickly rekindle those concerns and potentially bring NASDAQ compliance issues right back into focus.
And finally, intense execution risk.
It manifests in 2 critical ways. First, the 96% dependence means the entire investment thesis relies heavily on flawless commercial execution by Zimmer Biomet, a risk entirely outside NMTC's control. Second, the valuation hinges on successful, timely development and commercialization of the future SCS and drug delivery products.
And they're not competing against startups in these fields.
No, they are facing highly sophisticated entrenched giants like Medtronic, Boston Scientific, Abbott, and specialized neuromodulation players like ClearPoint Neuro in every single adjacent market they try to enter.
So in conclusion, NMTC is a high-risk bet on flawless execution and a platform transformation that secures long-term market leadership in multiple massive neurological domains. The potential reward, tied to solving critical CNS delivery and chronic pain problems with the minimally invasive approach, is aligned with the extreme degree of execution and the structural risks required to get there.
The current financial momentum provides a window of opportunity, but that window is narrow and demands continued attention to both the technological progress and the structural financial and partnership risks.
Indeed. In this rapidly advancing field, What would it genuinely mean for patient care if one company, using one core, minimally invasive platform, could truly transform treatment across multiple complex neurological conditions, from epilepsy to chronic pain and targeted drug delivery? And how might that fundamentally reshape the competitive landscape of the entire multi-billion-dollar industry?
Risk defined, portfolio protected.